There are some who believe that death is not the end, but the beginning of a new journey. They are called paranormal investigators. It is their job to research the unexplainable, those things that go bump in the night. And it is their mission to collect irrefutable proof that these entities exist and that cases of paranormal activity are legitimate. I recently sat down with Lisa Trump from Pink, the paranormal investigators of Northern Kentucky, to talk about their mission and the incredible proof they've collected over the years. Lisa Trump, welcome to the show. I really appreciate it. Lisa is the lead investigator of Pink, which is the Paranormal Investigators of Northern Kentucky. And I am super excited to have you here. I got to tell you, to be 100% upfront, my wife and I are paranormal nuts. Like we love watching, Ghost Adventures and Dead Files and Kindred Spirits, all of those great paranormal investigative type of shows, So can you tell us a little bit about Pink itself and its investigations and how that got started?
Sure. Well, first, let me clarify. I'm not the lead investigator. I am one of the investigators. Our team founder is Mike Palmer, and he founded Pink in 2005. I am temporarily helping with the team while he takes a little sabbatical, and he should be back in February. Let's see. We are a nonprofit. We investigate mostly private homes and businesses. We do not seek out to investigate. We respond to those who seek us out. So we have a web page and a Facebook page. And so currently my role right now would be to get the messages in, be the case manager, talk to the client, see if we couldn't resolve something a little bit, and get their activity to settle down. And then we would get them on the schedule. We do about two investigations a month, I guess. And we have a great team of investigators. We have about 17 investigators currently with us, about 10 active. They come from all different walks of life, all different professions. They all have day jobs. So this is something that we do on our own time, mostly weekends and evenings. I'm fortunate enough to have retired last year from a position I held for 27 years. So I have a little more time to kind of put into this for now. My husband and I travel during the summer, so we are not as active during the summer, but in the winter months, we're pretty active with the team.
Gotcha. So tell me about everybody that I know that is into doing these sort of things. They usually have a personal experience that got them started with that. So can you give us a little bit more information of what got you involved in paranormal investigation?
Yeah, absolutely. I've had experiences since childhood. I didn't understand them at the time, although I had a very supportive family who they believed in ghosts. So it wasn't like they were trying to tell me not to believe. About the time I became a teenager, it started picking up. I started seeing people standing over my bed at night when I wake up, and I could see figures walking through the house. Every house that I've lived in has been haunted. At first I thought that was strange and I wouldn't tell anybody. I've come to learn that because I have a little bit of an ability, I kind of draw them in. So it's not so much the houses that are haunted, it's just that I kind of pull them in with me. Often when we come home from investigation, my house will be pretty active for a week or two while I'm going through the evidence and reviewing.
Right. And I've heard similar stories of just that residual energy that attaches itself to people in some of these groups and things that we also watch. Now I'm very curious because there's a lot of really neat equipment that you guys use out on the job when you're doing your investigations. There's a spirit box that you mentioned. There's, kind of your standard digital recorders for EVP work and stuff like that. Probably my favorite is an SLS camera. I really like that. The thermal cameras, you can really see lots of cool stuff that maybe you're not picking up with your own eyes through those. So can you tell me, what is the most reliable piece of equipment that you get the most activity from when you guys are investigating? And is there any bit of technology that you guys don't really trust? And I can tell you for myself, I work as a programmer in my day job, so I'm not too big on like the ghost hunting apps because they scare me. I'm like, could you really put something in the program to make it, appear like there's something there? But tell me about some of that technology and what you guys like and what you don't like.
Sure. First of all, I agree wholeheartedly with you about the apps. I don't use them. I do suspect that maybe, it's for entertainment. So, take it with a grain of salt. Unless I used a piece of equipment that really started to prove something to me, I would not put any faith into any equipment until I get those results. We have certainly received results with the spirit box that are absolutely amazing.
Can you say your name into the box?
Same thing with the SLS camera, amazing. Thermal camera, amazing. So it's by using these devices and realizing that we can correlate some of the activity and evidence, put it all together and come to the client with some real proof. And that's when we start building confidence in those devices. My personal favorite would be the Spirit Box. I have tremendous success with that. I also love the SLS camera. You know, for me, it was very validating because I knew that I had a ghost in my house that would walk through my hallway and into my kitchen. And the very first day that we started up that camera, I caught it. And I caught it looking around the corner and it would wave to me. And I knew it because I knew I could, kind of see it as it would move through the hallway. But this was another confirmation that, yeah, I really was seeing this. So it's a great validation tool as well, especially for clients. They think there's something in their house. Most of the time we'll walk into a client's house, they don't know what to say. The first thing they'll say is, "You're going to think I'm crazy," but we hear that a lot. And yeah, it isn't something you talk about, over the water cooler. But we've seen everything. And when we can validate for a client that there really is activity going in their house, it's an amazing feeling to have somebody go from, "I'm afraid I'm crazy," to, "Oh my God, this is really happening."
Yeah. Yeah, it makes them feel like there actually is something to those stories, I'm sure. And you guys actually you have this amazing photo. And I was hoping that maybe you could tell me about the case a little bit because
Yeah.
it's a photo of, it looks like maybe one of the investigators there is touching the hand of perhaps a spirit or apparition or something like that, that you can see through the camera. Does the wire framing out? Can you tell us a little bit more about that investigation?
Okay, so that's a little technique that we try to use when we use our SLS camera. And what we're trying to determine is, can this thing react to us? Can it understand us? Can it follow directions? Is it willing to follow directions? So that's my husband you see in that picture. We are at Terror Town in Williamsburg in a haunted museum. They called us out because they were having some activity in this museum. And the museum has all kinds of interesting paranormal oddities. It has Ouija boards, and it has planchets, and it has a lot of old time medical equipment and things like that. So of course it would be something that could really, maintain some energy. So we went in with a grain of salt, trying to figure out what was going on. And sure enough, this little guy showed up. And so we will do that. We will say, "Can you touch my hand?" And we will hold our hand out. And we're looking for that response. That's another validation that this is really happening and they are really able to hear us and do what we ask. Often we'll say, "Can you kick your leg out?" Or, "Can you stand?" or "Can you sit?" And they do. So we know then that we are working with an entity that is interested in communicating. That's a good sign. Often they just need to be crossed over or acknowledged about something. And when they show us that they are willing to communicate, we usually have a little bit better success with getting things cleaned up there.
That is great. There's, I love EVP work as well. And sometimes, I mean, I don't know how you guys catch some of these voices because they're so low, you know, even when you play them back. But there's a great video, and I'll put it in here. But it looks like you're kind of scanning a room, and you're saying, "Can you show yourself again?" And you hear this voice in the background saying, "You won't find me."
Could you show yourself again, please? You hear something?
Was that also at Terrytown? Where was that at?
No, that was actually at a medical facility training office. So this was a case where, and I can't name the medical facility, it's in northern Kentucky. So these workers were so terrified that they would not stay in the building by themselves. If they had to work overtime, husband was coming in and sitting with them. It just got to the point where they just were in tears over this thing. So they called the team in, and, you know, we were able to validate what was there. We actually were able to clear it out pretty well. But yeah, that was a really interesting capture from that medical office training facility.
That's fantastic. I don't want you to name any names or anything like that, but I'm curious. Maybe to make this a two-parter question. I'm sure you have a case that is like your most memorable case, one that was super active, maybe some crazy stuff was happening there that made you a real believer of, hey, this is a real event that's happening here. This is crazy. And then on the flip side of that, have you guys ever experienced, and I'm sure that many years of you working with this, have there been hoaxes that you guys have gotten brought onto? Again, you don't have to name any names, but I'm curious, does anybody just kind of maybe want the experience, but maybe there's not anything there, or even more nefarious than that, maybe they set some things up? Have you ever experienced that?
We did have a case where we captured on camera one of our clients moving something. Although, you know, this case was complicated, and I do think there was a haunting going on in the house. This individual, I think, was so desperate for somebody to believe her that she perhaps faked some of the evidence to try to get us to believe her. You know, and maybe they don't have enough faith in the fact that we can find evidence. I've never been on a case yet where I haven't found evidence. And, you know, my theory on that is people don't invite strangers into their home unless something's really wrong. You know, they're trusting that we're going to come in there and be able to help them, and they don't know anything about us. You know, they're finding us online. And in this world where we can't always be so trustful of things, you know, it's a great honor to be invited in, but also we understand that there's probably something really going on, because you just don't have strangers in your house unless something's going on. So in my personal experience, I have never been on a case without having proof of activity. Now, we have had investigators who have been to locations and it's been something physical going on in the house that has more related to the house, or, you know, what's something that the client is doing, and it's not really ghost related, but that's not been my experience. So my favorite case that I talk about, and I don't want to say favorite, it was a scary one, and I was pretty new as an investigator. You know, it took a little bit of convincing to get my husband on board with this, because he doesn't have paranormal experiences. He knew I was passionate about this and I was going to do it anyway. So when he joined the team, he was like, well, I'm coming with you. You're not going into these houses without me. But I will try to debunk things. So he's not one, you know, to be thinking about ghosts at all. So we went into this home, and this man, when we first got there, I thought he was schizophrenic. I did not in any way believe this was going to be a situation with any kind of spirit. He was hearing voices. his eyes were kind of going, like blank, and then he would snap out of it, and then he'd give us a lot of vulgar words that he was hearing. He said he could hear music playing continually. He had lost 2 or 3 jobs because of this. It had just started in the house, but it was starting to follow him everywhere. His wife was starting to have experiences as well. So, we set up our equipment. It was a completely quiet night, other than we had those little K2 meters, and the meters would light up all the way to red if you held it up to him. So, we were kind of suspecting that this has more to do with him than the house. It turns out this was a demonic case, and very frightening. The evidence really, when we were there, didn't seem too bad. We gauged things by what kind of activity we're getting, and we didn't really know what to think when we left there. But within days, we were very alarmed. We called in a Catholic priest. They ended up bringing an exorcist in from Indianapolis. And things started happening in my home. I, don't want to like go into the whole faith thing, but honestly, this sealed my faith in how to overcome some of these things, because that's what got me through this over the next 3 months. This thing knew that I was trying to help this man. And when I would pray for it, I would get sulfur smells in my house. And I would go from, I have never had a day of depression in my life. I would go nosedive down. Like if I were on a bridge, I would have jumped off. It was terrifying.
Wow.
I called the priest that was working with us, and he said, Lisa, stop it, back off right now. He said, you are not ready to take this on. He said, let us do it. We're prepared. You've done what you needed to do. You gathered the information for us to get us this far, but I don't want this thing going after you or your family. And it ended up going after my son as well. So took about 3 months to clear it out of the house, and it was very terrifying. I'm almost hesitant to go into any of those cases anymore. I'm fine going in, identifying, and getting out. But I learned a lesson about how terrifying it can be. Now, that being said, that's the only demonic case I've ever been on in my 12 or 13 years investigating. Most of the time it is grandma or mom or dad, family members, or, it can be connected to the land before the house was there. We get all kinds of things. We get men, women, children, things speaking in different languages. Each case is individually different, but not as terrifying as that case was. And so that's my most memorable, just because it really opened my eyes to what we could be walking into.
Definitely. And I feel for you for that. I mean, I can't imagine something like that. It's got to be incredibly terrifying, especially knowing that it may have followed you back home, being something like that. I was actually going to ask you about demonic cases and stuff like that, because I assume those are extremely rare. And as you said, this was the only one that you had experienced in that time frame. So it does appear that way. But from yourself or other investigators that have been on those sort of cases, what are some of the clues to make you believe that, I know you mentioned the sulfur smell. Are there other clues that make you believe that, hey, this isn't really a human entity or formerly human entity? This is something that's non-human or demonic?
Clearly the man hearing voices was part of that. That's called oppression. So this thing was working on him to get him to give in. And at one point he said he invited it in. So that's a thing that we see with demonic cases. You're not going to walk through the grocery store and become possessed, or even walk through a cemetery and become possessed. It doesn't work like that. In most of these cases, they are invited in. Specifically, this man admitted to using some witchcraft, and he called it white witchcraft, and then it became so oppressive to him. He said, I finally said to you, I will live with you. And that kind of opened the door for it to stick around and take him seriously. Sulfur smells. He had put on a blessed metal and it burnt his skin. Usually the oppression will happen with, depression issues, personality changes, hearing voices that aren't there, deep thoughts that, it's just out of the norm, and it becomes, it takes over. It just takes over. So I knew as soon as I came home and started researching, because I was fairly new to the team, I really wasn't up yet on a lot of the demonic issues. So I, of course, ordered all kinds of books, and I read books specifically written by exorcists. And, I started to realize that all of these things that was happening with this man were in the exorcist book. And it was like, oh my heavens, it's just this classic case of everything that they said was going to happen did happen. So yeah, so it's not really something that we ever really go in thinking, oh, we're walking into a house of demons. But it's not that rare. It's very rare, and it's usually brought in like through some kind of Ouija board, or making bargains with spirits to do your bidding type of thing.
Opening up some sort of gateway or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
That leads me into not just cases like this, but maybe there is a spirit or an entity that that really believes that that is their space, and maybe they take a darker sort of element during these cases of not wanting those people in that house, and maybe there's some conflict there. What do you guys now? Do you guys just do the investigation, or do you also help try to clear the area if there is, those darker sort of presences there? And what does that clearing look like? What are the steps and the processes that you use to do that?
Well, first, the investigation is very important because we are trying to determine what's there. We're going to gather clues. If it's saying help me, we know that it's something that really wants to be crossed over. Spirits that are trapped are very much in the spirit world as they were in the human world. So if you were kind of a cranky, negative person in real life, chances are that's who you are in spirit. If you were a jokester and funny and love to talk, that's what we're going to pick up on audio. You're going to still have that same essence of your personality. So, we see all kinds of things, but often we see the ones that are a little bit cranky and negative. I always say you're not going to heaven with any negativity. That doesn't happen. You have to let all that go, and move into the light, into a more positive environment. So until they're ready to be a little more positive, that's usually where they are stuck. But by the time they're reaching out and saying, help me, they're finally figuring something out. Like, okay, what do I need to do? So first we do the investigation, we gather that evidence, and then we go back to the homeowner and we present it all to them. It's not abnormal. 10, 15 clips, sometimes 75 clips, depending on how haunted the house is and how many entities are there. We do find that there seems to be sometimes a hierarchy of spirit manifestation. So there's usually one that can really rule the roost, and the others are a little weaker and fall underneath him. Have you ever watched the TV show Survivor? That there's one person that you're watching the show and you're like, why is everybody doing what this person says? They just have that charisma about them to get people to do what they want. And that's what we also see with these spirits. So it's identifying them. And when we go in and we do a house blessing, we start with a clearing. We try to get these entities to understand that they have their own light, the ability to get their light, and they have their ability to cross whenever they need to. And we take them back through that process. Now, what I've learned works is I studied a book by Louise Ireland Frey. She was a psychiatrist back in the 90s that was working with patients that weren't responding to medication. So she was using a medium, and I think the book is called Releasing the Captives or something like that. But the book made me think that, okay, so if she could do this with people that were alive, why can't we do it with dead? So I pretty much modeled what I do to cross them over based on Louise's theories. And so what I do is I try to talk to them, let's let everything go. We need to let go of anger and rage. We need to let go of hatred and jealousy. All these negative things, you need to let that go. This is no longer doing any service for you. Sometimes we will kind of do a visualization, like take all that pain and just put it in a suitcase and just push it away, kind of thing, to get their mind, or what you would think of as their mind, into a better state. Because what we see is when they are trapped, it's kind of a cycle that they are reliving over and over and over, and they're trapped there. So it's very much just talking to them and getting them to see things differently and to be willing to go into the light. And then I reverse them back into the day they were born, kind of a regression, and then the day that they were conceived. And I tell them to look for their God spark. And that's a little flash of light that happens when the sperm and the egg come together. And we know scientists have actually seen this under microscopes. So there really is this little spark of light. I tell them to find that God spark and to concentrate on it. And as they do, that light will open for them, because that's who they really are. They are this perfect, being that was created. And often life just heaps on things, and they become muddled, and they don't even understand that they've got these beautiful souls. So once we get back to this beautiful soul and they can recognize it, then the light opens. And the reason we know this is because we've actually captured audio. We run audio during these sessions, and we've captured them saying, I see the light, or the light's so beautiful, or the light's so bright. So we know it's working. And then, of course, when the client reports back that their house is calm and quiet and feels good again, then we know for sure it has really worked. Some stubborn ones might take 1 or 2 blessings. Like I said, they're pretty much like they were in life. So if they were a little bit hard-headed and stubborn, it's going to take them a while before they figure it out, and in those cases, we just repeat the process over and over until we're successful with it, and they finally give in and decide to either go or to cross over.
Now, one of the interesting things, and you kind of brought it up there a second ago, was the use of mediums in some of these investigations. A lot of people might know Chip Coffey from shows like Kindred Spirits, or Amy Allen from Dead Files, and they really can pull in some great stuff, especially when it can be validated by the team's research as well, or maybe EVPs and stuff like that validate that messaging.
Right.
So can you tell me about some of those investigations where you've used mediums and how that has assisted your investigation? And have you been able to also validate through some of your own research what they're pulling through?
Yes. So we have had mediums come and go, over the years. Right now we have a young one that's just starting out. We had a team membership a few months ago, and she showed up and said, I think I have some abilities. And we said, well, this is going to be a great place for you to find out what that's all about. And so one of her first investigations, she said, I think I've got the name Alice. And so we started asking about Alice, and sure enough, our meters were lighting up. We actually captured on our spirit box. She says, hello, I'm Alice.
That's awesome.
Unfortunately, Alice was a young girl that died kind of sadly, and she was, stuck. So we knew going in that we could address Alice and talk to her specifically, and, get her to cross and be at peace finally. So yeah, we value a good medium. Now, we don't take that completely, we don't just march right in there and say, well, the medium said. We want to make sure that our evidence is also backing that up. So as long as we are pulling in evidence that supports it, we will then present it to the client. If it's something that just didn't pan out, we don't mention it, because we have no way to prove it. So again, it's used as a tool. And it's a very valuable tool, but it is just one of the tools in our big arsenal of gadgets that we use.
Absolutely. There's an interesting theme that I see repeated in a lot of investigations. And I'm curious to know if you come across this in any of your investigations, and that's bodies of water. It seems like near certain streams or lakes or ponds, it seems like maybe the activity is heightened a little bit, like maybe they're is something there that's storing the energy, or at least helping to power the energy. Have you experienced that at all? Is that something you've come across?
A little bit. It's not just water. It can be railroad tracks, where the railroads are coming, the trains are coming through and creating a little extra energy. Remember, spirit is a form of energy. And so it needs energy in order to manifest. Humans can create that energy themselves just through their emotions. I often see, we will often see activity on stairways. People are going up and down the steps all day long, creating a lot of energy in that area. Waterways, another one. So yeah, it can be a lot of different things that can help facilitate that energy and feed kind of what you would call ghost food for these spirits. But yeah, water is one of them.
That's great. Now, I'm curious to know, just going back here, you guys had a thermal image that was really interesting, because you could see the full body of this apparition in the thermal image. Now, can you tell me a little bit about that? You always hear about cold spots in a lot of these locations, right? And so I get curious when I see these thermal images, if that is like a residual, if you were able to feel into that zone, if you could feel that cold spot of them basically drawing the energy out of the atmosphere there. Can you go through that investigation and kind of talk a little bit about the thermal imaging as well?
So yeah, that particular picture was taken on the Bourbon Trail in Kentucky at one of the locations. I won't mention which one. And so this was a picture that my husband and I captured. We went on a little tour around Halloween. Of course, I had my thermal camera. I always have something with me. We were the very first people in line to enter into this big barrel house. And there was no one standing in front of us. Everybody was behind us. And we were actually just trying out the camera for the first time. And we got this incredible image of a man standing right there in front of us. And apparently there has been reports of seeing a worker that stands in that area. So I think we captured him, but it was completely unexpected. I've actually captured a nice image at Waverly. Mike Palmer has captured quite a few cool images with his thermal. So it's really, it's been a valuable tool. It's hit or miss, sometimes nothing with it the whole night. And other times we get some really cool stuff. But yeah, it definitely has to do with temperature. Another thing that we notice is the temperature change. So sometimes when that little SLS camera is running or the thermal is running, you can reach your hand in and you can feel a difference, in temperature. It will get cold. We actually have little, measurements that we are constantly doing to check the temperature of the room. And we do see it go up and down. So yeah, it definitely is related to spirit activity.
So I'm sure you guys have also gotten calls from startup groups, other people that are trying to get involved in researching activity. Maybe it starts in their own place or elsewhere, and they just get excited about it and want to jump into it. Mm-hmm. But to me, it also seems like they might need a little bit of caution in certain areas, not to jump into a darker area or open up any doorways or anything like that. So I'm curious to know, what is some of the advice that you give to these new startup groups that are just entering the journey of paranormal investigation? What do you caution them about? And do you have anything else to offer them?
Yeah, I was so passionate about it. I was going to do this no matter what. But, I learned through working with the team that it's not all roses. So you do have to be careful. Know how to protect yourself. I wear a blessed metal when I do it, and that's my protection. Some people use crystals, some people use prayer, but there should be something that you keep around your energy field that keeps you protected. I always tell clients, we'll believe sometimes, and then the client goes and gets a recorder, and the next thing you know, they're sending me, oh, I caught this on the recorder. I always tell them, stop, because the more attention you give these things, the more it will kick up. And so if they have a haunted house to start with, they don't need to be showing it attention. We go in, it's a one and done, and we're out, and it's no longer in the house. if they're there and they're trying to video record all day long, it's going to get worse. So new people coming in need to understand what that means. When you are giving a spirit attention, it might think you are very interested in following you home. You have to know how to handle that. You have to know how to do a clearing. So many times on TV, you see them walking around with sage and they're banishing them away with their feather, but they're not really, they can break the energy up that way, but it will come back, especially if we got something a little darker going on. And so when we sage, we're always going to our higher power. For me, that's God. We ask God to bless that smoke, and then wherever the smoke goes into that house and drifts, those blessings are carried. Because we are then saying to the entity, we believe in a higher power that will take care of you, and it's not this little bundle of sage. So again, it's knowledge of knowing what you're doing and how to do it. It's not something you just jump into. If you're interested in this, you need to read, get all the books that you can first. Read from the experts, what they tell you first, and learn from them. Go on a few of these weekend, getaways with other investigators to learn techniques and things. But just be careful. It's, even today, every time that I go in investigation, it is taken very seriously. I've never been hurt in all these years I've done it, but it's because I do it responsibly.
Yeah. Now, a lot of people, when they're learning about this, they're hearing residual energy versus intelligent energy. And we kind of can think of the residual energy like a tape recorder playing over and over and over again, right? And intelligence is going to talk back to you in an intelligent way. So what do you feel like is the more common that you're seeing out there? Do you see mostly intelligent energy, or are you mostly seeing residual type energy? And do you see any patterns when you're doing investigation with those sort of things?
For me, the most part is intelligent. I mean, sometimes we'll get something on audio that just doesn't make any sense. That's probably residual. It's coming from somewhere that's, trapped in the atmosphere. If you see something, walk through a wall and it doesn't acknowledge you, and it happens every Sunday at 3:00, that kind of thing, if it's very repetitive, it doesn't respond to you, that's more than likely residual. And those imprints, although it's kind of unexplained, we do know that they do happen. The intelligent stuff will answer your questions. It will, touch your hand when you say, touch my hand. It will kick its leg out. Then we know that it is intelligent, and then we know that they also can understand us. Like, so when we go into the house blessing, they will have our full attention because we know that they can hear us, and we will be addressing them. So I would say the majority of the time, what I see is intelligent. Again, we are being invited into homes that have had such scary experiences that they're letting strangers come into their home. So in most of these cases, it's not something residual. It's something that's really scared them, something that has touched them, or, pulled the blanket off of them, or, something that has just freaked them out so bad that they don't know what to do at that point.
So if you guys come across haunted objects, not just like houses, but maybe there's something in the house that is really drawing energy to it. Have you come across those? Do you have any stories about that?
So I believe it's on our Facebook page. We have some pictures of this. We had a client who bought an Ouija board for $1 at a yard sale, and noticed, shortly after that they were having activity in their house. So when we got there, we put our K2 meter on the board, and the board lit up. We knew it was attached to that board. We did a blessing and a cleansing of that board, and then when we put the K2 meter back on the board, everything was nice and calm, and there were no lights lighting up on the K2 meter. So we knew that that was an attachment to that board. And Ouija boards are one of those things, people use them kind of for fun. They don't realize that they might really be drawing something in. And if they don't know how to close that board out or use it properly, they can get something stuck to the board.
Definitely. Well, I really appreciate all this great information. you guys have some fantastic video and picture footage and all of that good stuff on here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to link all of this stuff um, onto this video as well. But I'm curious about, are there events and things that we can go and see the Pink Crew at and meet you guys, and maybe the people that are in that northern Kentucky? And I'm guessing you probably service Cincinnati and that sort of southern Ohio area too, right?
Right.
So are there places where people can go and get involved with your group and maybe come along on an investigation?
Well, we do a library presentation several times a year through usually the Kentucky Boone County libraries, often around Halloween for sure, but I think we have one coming up in February. There we will kind of show some of our evidence, talk about the equipment that we use and some of the experiences we've had. Occasionally we do what's called a pay to play. So that would be like, an example would be Poasttown Elementary School in Middletown, where you pay like $500 to rent it for the night. And then we will then invite friends and family, or, people that have reached out to us and say, I'd really love to go. We'll keep their names and we'll contact them at that time and invite them along for the night. We don't particularly invite anybody along in our home investigations or our businesses because they are private. We don't give out names or addresses. We sometimes will say this came from Highland Heights or this came from Newport, but we won't give any specific, information out about anybody at any time. So we're really not at liberty to take anybody into the houses. But when we do a pay to play, we often take people in and do that. I took my workplace in. I worked for University of Cincinnati for 27 years, and I worked with health services, so lots of doctors and nurses, and they were interested in my stories, but didn't know what to think. And by the end of the night, we had a bunch of believers coming out of Poasttown School. They were blown away with the things that they experienced that night. So anytime that we have an opportunity to teach someone what that is, to see it for themselves and understand that there is a spirit world, it's kind of a cool thing to be able to do.
That's really cool. One of the things that really gets to me is I've seen some of these, and it seems almost harder in certain investigations where there's obviously a child spirit there, and as a dad, that kind of breaks my heart. I have three beautiful little girls, and I can't imagine a child spirit being kind of confused and not really knowing what's going on. And I've seen evidence of where they put a ball down or something, and the ball will be getting played with. Have you guys experienced that? Is that easier or harder to help cross over for those sort of spirits?
It's very sad, especially if they're trapped, and they don't understand where they are. Our theory on that is that, they didn't understand death, and maybe the parents were grieving so hard that the child didn't want to go. They were kind of hanging around because mom and dad were so sad. And then their light usually only lasts about 3 days, and then it will start to close off. That's how most spirits get trapped. They don't go into the light right away. So that can happen. And, I think they're fine as long as mom and dad are still alive, but, eventually mom and dad are going to pass. Some of them go with mom and dad when they pass. Others are so lost by then that, they're in their own little world. I've had a lot of luck with reaching out to children. I'm a grandma myself, so I usually will reach out in a way that's very motherly or grandmotherly to try to endear them, and trust me. It is hard, and it gets very emotional sometimes, but we usually have pretty good luck with getting them to cross. And not always are they stuck. Sometimes they just come in because they're concerned about something that's going on. So I had an example of a family. The lady called us in. She was a hospice nurse. She thought that they had something going on in the house that was related to her being in hospice, that it followed her home. We got there. What we learned when we got there was that her brother was recently divorced and living upstairs, and he had his children every other weekend. he happened to be there that weekend. So we do have a rule, no kids in the house when we investigate. So they took the kids out for the evening to dinner and walk around Walmart or somewhere and bring them back. So they came in about 10:30. But in the meantime, oh, well, let me tell you so the reason she called us, this is probably one of the most bizarre things that's ever happened. So she was in bed reading and she saw something fly past her and she looked over the wall and there was a marshmallow stuck to the wall, little tiny marshmallow. And she didn't have any marshmallows in the house. Like she was like, I don't know what that was. So we went in, and at first I was like, did she glue that marshmallow on the wall? Like, I've never seen this before. I mean, sometimes are we being punked, kind of thing. So we looked at the marshmallow. Our medium at the time, she said, oh my God, Lisa, this is a little girl who drowned. And she's connected to this family somehow. And I think she's about 3 or 4. I see her all wet. She's reaching out to the family. So when the family came back home, the lady that called us in was standing around the dining room table. Her brother and the 3 kids were standing there. They kind of asked us how it went. And the medium's kind of going, Lisa, talk to him. So I said, well, I got something to ask. And I said, did anybody lose a child or did somebody drown in this family? I mean, the whole family just went blank face. And the woman that called us in looked at her brother and said, I swear to God, I didn't tell them anything. They did not know this. And then he looked at me and he said, my 3-year-old daughter drowned in a bathtub.
Oh, no.
So, like, oh my God, it's just like sometimes the emotions that we have to deal with working with these clients is very hard on us as well, So I said, well, I don't normally do this when kids are around. I said, but I do have a spirit box and we could maybe try a session with them here because I think some of this activity's been, around the kids. The older son, the blanket had been pulled off. It scared him so bad he wouldn't sleep upstairs with his dad anymore. I said, let's just give it a try. I can't promise anything. I don't know if we're going to get anything. But the most amazing and touching thing happened. And it's probably one of my most favorite cases and what makes me keep doing this. Because when you can bring something like this to a family, it's just amazing. But so we started running the spirit box. The little girl's name, I believe, was Riley. And so when we said, who is this? We got Riley and they were like, oh, that's her name. That's her name. So the message that she had for them was keep my family together. And what we didn't know was that mom and dad had divorced and mom was having a hard time and she was getting ready to sell the house and move to Florida. And these kids were torn. They didn't know if they should stay with dad or if they should go with mom, And so this message that was so powerful, this child came in to try to keep her family together. She didn't want this death of hers to destroy the rest of them. And, that's the beauty of love. And so, not all the time, it's not ghosts all the time. Sometimes it's loved ones just being really caring about their family environment and what's happening with the family unit.
Yeah, that messes with you. It really, really messes with you. Holy cow. I can't even imagine. It's hard for me to transition with that because that's a crazy story, but that's so powerful. That is really powerful. I am curious to know though, one of the things that it keeps getting brought up, and I'm not sure how much truth is to it, and maybe you have more experience with that. Certain people will do certain investigations around what they call dead time. Right. So 3 a.m. They believe 3 a.m. is like this magical energy doorway where spirits are ultra active. Right. Do you find any truth to any, not just dead time, but is there specific times of the day or night or throughout the year that you see heightened activity? Or is that just kind of that's just some rumor that you see out there?
To me, that's a rumor. I've had activity in this house in the middle of the day. My home has been haunted for 30 years and it doesn't just happen at nighttime. Our clients often will say that as well. It can happen in the middle of the day. Now, if they are seeing a pattern, it's always happening at 1 a.m., then we might try to stick around till 1 a.m. to see if this is going to happen while we're there. But for the most part, it's really not, it's not, there's no dead time. Spirits can be around at any time.
Gotcha. It's I'll chalk that under rumor. One of the last things I had was the question of guides. So mediums will all a lot of times talk about guides, but sometimes I can think like maybe there's just a spirit that is really attached to a person, and they want to be close to that person. They want to help that person. Do you guys have any experience with guides being part of these investigations, or even a family member or something that is kind of not really attached to a house or a property or a piece of furniture or whatever, but they just want to make sure their grandkids okay, and so they follow them around everywhere? Is that something that they come across?
Yeah, absolutely. We've had a couple cases like that. The one that two that I can think of. The one was a mother who died very young at age 31 of alcohol poisoning on New Year's Eve, and she left behind two little boys who her mother was now raising. They called us in. They thought that they saw her in the house. They were suspecting it was her, but they weren't sure. During the spirit box sessions, I said, "Is there anything that you want to tell your sons?" And we had a lot of things going on, a lot of affirmations that it was her. We were having flashlight activity and things that were confirming that we suspected that she was here. But she said two things. She said, "Thank you, Mama," and she said, "I watch them." So I knew she was watching over her sons. And for Mother, Mom couldn't believe that it came out, "Thank you, Mama," because every morning when she would call her, she would say, "Hello, Mama." That's how she called her mom, very endearing, Mama.
Yeah.
So for it to come out that way was pretty cool. It was pretty insane.
That is great.
Yeah.
So you guys service Northern Kentucky and kind of the Southern Ohio area, but so I know
Indiana.
on your site you have a place where people can go and they can report cases that you guys can go investigate. Now, can they also reach out to you if maybe they are in another state or area that is a little bit far out for you guys to just help kind of identify? Are you guys in contact with other teams out there that you can help point them in a different direction? Or have you guys maybe taken some long trips before?
We've taken a few long trips. With COVID, we're not doing that so much right now. I think Virginia is as far as the team has been. We will travel 3-4 hours, spend the night somewhere and come back. Which, by the way, all of that comes out of our own pockets, so it depends on the funds and the timing and, whether we can actually pull that off and have enough investigators to go. But for long distance, I've talked to people from California and from Florida, Oregon. So yeah, they reach out. Most of them have questions. I will try to find them someone. I know a few owners of like paranormal type pay and plays. And so they have a lot of contact with all kinds of different teams. And I will usually reach out to those owners and say, "Hey, do you know any teams from this area that that you feel comfortable with?" Because I don't want to refer them to someone that may not be what we feel is best for that client.
Right.
But yeah, we try to refer them. Over the last Christmas holiday, I've worked with like 3 that are like 3 hours away that I've just been, talking to by Zoom or by telephone and giving them tips on how to handle and manage, the energy in their house. And hopefully that'll get things quieted down for them.
Well, let us know what are some places where people can go to keep track of you guys and some of your investigations. Where are the best places that they can go to do that? I know Facebook is awesome. There's some interviews on there. I've
Great.
definitely checked those out. But yeah, how can people keep up with you? And do you have anything coming up for the group that you want people to know about?
Well, Facebook is probably our most up to date. We do have a web page that needs to be updated a little bit. It's a matter of finding time to get that done. Mostly Facebook. We do have Twitter. That's one that Mike will update from time to time. I don't usually do Twitter. But that's basically where you can find us. It's, Pink Paranormal Investigators of Northern Kentucky. If you Google that, you'll find us.
Awesome. Well, Lisa, I can't thank you enough. This has been really, really fascinating to learn more about Pink and learn more about paranormal investigating. So thank you so much for your time. Is there anything else you wanted to cover before we left?
No, I just want to say we have a great group of team members. They're all dedicated to what we do. They're all passionate about what we do. They're all responsible about what we do. So, being a member of Pink is tremendous. I have tremendous pride of being part of this team. We are a great team, and we get the job done, and we do it with, care. So if anybody is thinking about having Pink out, that's my view of the team. And I think once you meet us and know us, you would think the same as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for your time again. And hopefully I will catch some more of those great interviews popping up on your page and some of those investigations. Keep putting out those videos because that is really, really cool stuff.
Okay,
you have a great night. Thank you so much for your time. And
well,
Happy New Year.
Us.
This was a fantastic way to end the new year. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Bye-bye.
Anytime.